Welcome into Blitzalytics Top 5 Prospect Series. Today we are going to be tackling the 2020 interior defensive lineman. I am joined by Cody Manning, Roy Countryman. How are we doing today, gentlemen?
Doing great, guys. Can't wait to get to see some of these big uglies up front. Some unique pass rushers and run defenders here that we're going to touch upon, and just cannot wait to jump into this.
Hey, I'm doing great as well. Just hanging in here and happy to hear Roy's top 5 interior linemen and see if I have any disagreements here with his list.
Yeah, so this is like one of the few draft classes or positional groups, I should say, that is a little lacking in this draft class, or at least it's being underappreciated. I think some of these guys are going to have year one impacts. Some of these guys are going to be deep sleepers, and they're not being mentioned. I love your number 5, Roy. Which we will get into in a second. But what are your guys' thoughts on how many interior D linemen we could see go round 1? Because it's probably the most unsung positional group being talked about outside of the top 2 in Brown and Kinlaw.
Yeah, I think you're really going to see there's 2 firm picks probably within the first 15 defensive linemen to go off. And I'm really questioning to see if we're going to see a third. I would not be surprised to see somebody sneak in at the end of the first round and simply pluck one for that 5th-year option to have another year of control. But more than likely, you're going to see some quality players in that 3rd to 5th round. I think is really where you're going to get the quality players that have a distinct role in mind.
Yeah, I agree with basically what Roy said. Obviously, I believe Brown and Kinlaw are locks to go in first round just because of their high talent level. And then I think that there is a drop-off after those 2. And depending on the flavor of Kool-Aid, depending on what you need in your defense, I mean, I think 3 on is this. It's a toss-up of who you like. I feel like everybody's got different opinions on it. And it just depends on how the draft board falls. But I could definitely see 3 going in the first round. I just think that 3rd one is like a major wild card on who it could be.
I agree. I think if there is one to go, it could be in that 25 to 32 range. But I'm with Roy. I likely think that these guys are going to be day 2. The 3 through 5 are going to probably be day 2, day 3 guys, just because the amount of talent that's elsewhere. But it doesn't mean that they're not. It's not by value. It's just there's other positions that are a little bit more stacked, and you know, interior D lineman isn't necessarily the biggest position in need. It's more of a luxury pick. You know, a couple of years ago, we talked really heavily about, you know, when we had that Ndamukong Suh, Aaron Donald combo and some other combos, we were talking about interior pressure being the biggest thing. I think it's, you know, it is, but you can get away with having a serviceable D tackle. But it just depends. I mean, everybody can use one. Not everybody's got one. You know, if the Chiefs want to pair somebody up with Chris Jones, I could see that. It'll be interesting to see. But without further ado, let's jump on into it, gentlemen. Number 5, Marlon Davidson, interior D lineman out of Auburn. This man is 21 years old. Take it away, Roy.
Yeah, Davidson's one of my favorite players in this draft just because he's a unique body type. I was really wondering whether to even list him here at interior defensive line because he mostly played edge at Auburn, and he's a Greenville, Alabama native. He was a USA Today All-American coming to Auburn, and he earned SEC All-Freshman honors his first year there on campus. Then he was an important role player as a sophomore with 3 sacks, and then he started all 13 games in 2018, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and then the real kicker, he blocked three kicks during that year, which tied for 2nd in all college football. Then he really seriously thought about coming out last year's draft, but he wound up returning, and he made that return count, grabbing first-team All-SEC honors, and tying Derek Brown for the team lead with 12.5 tackles for loss. And then he was actually the leader on Auburn with 7.5 sacks, and he had two forced fumbles. This guy's just a really unique player. The amount of bend that he has for a guy that size is freakish. I don't want to say that he's going to play like a 3 tackle or even 5 technique. If you pigeonhole him to one play, like one certain position, I think you're doing him wrong. I think his upside comes from his ability to stand up, come down, play all over the place. He's nimble-footed for a big man. He has impressive short area quickness. His hands in themselves are like vice grips. He can ragdoll people if he gets a hold of you, and he has some impressive pass rushing moves for a guy that big. But some people are knocking him because he doesn't really have maybe a true position. But I think those are short-sighted people. I think you really just need to give him a certain role and let him do his thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those teams, the 3-4 hybrids, that they can just throw him anywhere, whether that is, I think he can play up and down or across the line of scrimmage. When breaking down his film and Brown's film, it was so many times you're like, was that number 3? Was that number 5? Was that number 3? Was that number 5? He is, he's bigger. He's got they say he's 303. He looks like he's solid 320 plus. if he's 303, then I'm 100 pounds. It's just, he is huge and he moves so fast. He's got the bend, like you said. He's agile for his size. Like, he is a freak athlete for his size. He ran a 5.0340 at 6'3", 300, pushing 300 pounds. He's just a physical specimen, and I think if he went from the 3 technique to the 5 to stand-up edge like you see, you don't see a guy that big, a 300-plus pounder like that, playing at that position. It's just so impressive. He could end up being as good as Derek Brown, when this is all said and done.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys said. My favorite things about him is how he's able to bend and his swim move when he comes around that edge. He likes to try to get his paws on the ball and force that turnover. And I agree. I think his versatility is something that will allow him to fit on most teams' boards. And I agree with Roy. I think the NFL and most defensive coordinators are kind of getting that way. I think it's time to stop pigeonholing guys into certain positions. And if they're versatile to line up all over the place, you should take advantage of that and not just try to stick them in one spot and see if it fits.
Yeah, and really his only knock is that he don't have a true position, and that he was used basically in a rotation. He wasn't a full-time starter. He didn't play a full allotment of snaps, but that's the way it is now in the NFL for your defensive linemen. You can use guys in specific roles. Maybe you bring in some run defense guys their first 2 downs, and you let him just be a sub-package player. But either way, he's going to play a high amount of snaps in quality situations, and he's going to have an impact, especially rushing the passer here. So he's an intriguing guy, an intriguing fit. That actually, out of this list, being that I wasn't sure to include him as an edge or an interior, I think he might be the guy that's most talked about as that number 3 defensive lineman coming off the board at the end of round 1, with the Chiefs or somebody like that ilk that could really move him all around the formation. I think his draft range is really in the late round 1, early day 2. I don't think he's going to last by the end of the second round. A number of teams that have some creative minds, like the Patriots even, the Chiefs, the Rams, the Lions, the Seahawks, I could see loving this guy for his size and his differing abilities. And his year 1 projection, he's at least going to be a rotational pass rusher. Might not play the full allotment of snaps, but he's going to at least be a rotational piece in that defensive line conversation.
At the very least, a rotational player. It's not like he can't play the run either. Some of his highlight reel is outstanding against the run. It's not like he gets pushed back by any means. He can shake off defenders, shed blocks with ease. His highlight reel is just outstanding, and it showcases that edge rusher, but he can play inside, and I would love to see him next to Aaron Donald, and I'm sure Rob would too. What do you got for his go for it, sorry.
All I was going to say is that as far as where he goes, it does sound like he could go. He's one of those D-tackle, interior linemen that can go at the end of day 1. One team I would also bring out is possibly the Titans, because he probably fits a type of Mike Vrabel defense. He can line up next to Justin Simmons. He can line on the outside and do a pass rush duo with Harold Landry. As a Colts fan, that's something I don't want to see, but that's another team to watch at the end of the first.
Yeah, and for his floor and ceiling, really, I already touched upon like his rookie year production. I could see that being his absolute minimum for a floor as a rotational pass rusher in a defensive line rotation. His ceiling potential is really, to me, is the sky. It's he could be a dynamic presence as a run defender, as a pass defender, both standing up, down, 3-down defender across the board. And for me, I'm just going with one player comp in this one in the D-linemen because it was too hard to get 2 for each one of them. He just reminds me of a similar player in Cameron Jordan for the Saints. He sometimes stands up, although he's a dynamic presence inside. He might not be as quick as Cameron Jordan, but the type of ability that he has to both stand up and go down and be a real pain for a lot of offensive linemen to kind of contain.
Yeah, I like that. He's a big guy who can play the 3, the 5, stand up when he needs to. I just really think that he's going to be a force in the interior when it's all said and done on pass rushing situations. And if you need to throw him in, if he gets that 3-4 strong side role, he's going to dominate. All right, coming in at number 4, we have Justin Matabuke out of Texas A&M, 22-year-old defensive tackle.
All right, Matabuke, he's a fun guy to watch. He's a former 5-star recruit from Texas. He played in 13 games as a freshman, as a backup. He did get 2.5 tackles for loss that year. Then he was actually earned the team's defensive most valuable player as a sophomore, starting 12 of 13 games, and he led the squad with 3 forced fumbles and 6.5 sacks, with 10.5 of them coming for tackles for loss. Then this past season, he also topped the squad with 11.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks in 12 games, and he also blocked a kick. But he did choose not to play in their bowl game, which I cannot fault him for that, as he's a NFL product here. He's just a real intriguing type body set. He's not real big, but his burst and his first step quickness really puts offensive linemen back on their skates. As a 3 technique, and even he playing as a 0, he's just really unique with his short area quickness. His hands, he's quick and active with them. He has the leverage ability and the strength to be able to pivot underneath their pads and push the pocket backwards. And he also can get skinny and shoot through gaps. So he's just a real intriguing fit. He just might not be what everybody's looking for in terms of size and length. And he might get knocked for that and fall into the second round. But he is a game wrecker and be able to force the pocket and make guys uncomfortable from an interior pass rushing position.
Yeah, for me, you said it. That burst and that first step is insane. And he just looks slightly undersized. He just kind of has more of a lean frame. He's not this big, wide body like we were just talking about with Marlon Davidson. But he's a disruptor. I mean, he lived in the backfield of opponents, and he basically, it didn't matter if it was the run game, if it was the pass game. He was going to be a game wrecker and an impact player. I'm going to be intrigued to see where he goes. I don't know where people are going to what people are going to look at him. I think he's a solid 3 technique and a 4-3 and can kind of play all around, just like we talked about with Davidson. But he is, I don't know if you can get him out past the 5.
Yeah, for me, I just think I agree with everything you guys were saying. I think he's a potential playmaker at the next level if he can hit his ceiling. And I love his lateral movement when he's on the line, the disruptive pocket, like Roy was saying. And I think with him, it is going to come down to where he goes and if he can get the right defensive line coach and the right defensive coordinator to tap into his abilities and help him reach his full ceiling as a player. And I do think that maybe his slight frame, like you said, he does look a little undersized. I do think that does cause him to drop. But I think he could still go in the second round. He should be a day 2 player, though, no matter what happens.
Yeah, if the right situations arise, I could see him sneaking into the back of the first round, especially if it's a 4-3 team looking for that upfield penetrating style, even maybe as a 1 technique nose tackle, almost like a Jay Ratliff style, really penetrating. If you ask him the 2 gap, he's going to get blown out of the water. He don't have the lower body bulk, or like he has the understanding of leverage, but he simply can't withstand double teams consistently. So he's not that type of player. If you utilize him in a 4-3, shooting upfield, shooting gaps, using that explosive first step, you're going to get a really fun player. Teams that might show interest in him, Dallas Cowboys are always looking for interior pass rush here lately. The Dolphins, maybe the Bengals, somebody to maybe sit behind Geno Atkins to learn a little bit. The Titans even the Patriots can maybe show some interest in him. His first year as a rookie, I really see him as a rotational piece with a pass rushing upside, just as kind of similar to Davidson, only he's not going to be standing up. He's going to be in that interior somewhere, most likely as a 3 tech. And his career floor, to me, is that he's a rotational piece in a good defensive line. And his upside, to me, his ceiling, is a pass rushing force as a 3 tech who can play all 3 downs and makes the players better around him simply because that first step quickness.
Who do you got for his player comp?
If I was just to say really quick, I would add too, one thing that will help him out is as we have seen, he can block kicks. His first quick burst allows him to like kind of take advantage on special teams. So a big thing for players in this draft because of the lack of OTAs and mini camps is that somebody can provide special teams value. So I think that will help him make a case in the draft rooms.
Yeah, and my player comp for him, and he was somebody that's hard to find a comp for because of his lack of length, but the burst and also some power that's incorporated in that is Larry Ogunjobi for the Browns. When he came out of Charlotte, he was kind of a little, kind of under the radar, but he also had a nice combination of burst and power, even though Ogunjobi might be a little bit longer than what Matabuke is.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a perfect player comp. All right, we're going to keep on going down this list. Seems like we're speeding through these. Coming in at number 3, Texas Christian University's Ross Blaylock, 21-year-old defensive tackle.
Yeah, Ross Blaylock, I keep saying these guys are all fun to watch just because I like watching guys in the trenches like Jack does on the offensive line. But this guy, he's had some struggles with injuries, but he did show out as a redshirt freshman. He garnered freshman All-American and Big 12 co-defenseman defensive freshman of the year honors with 6.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks and 14 starts. But then he lost his sophomore campaign due to an Achilles injury. He then dropped 25 pounds during his rehab, and he came back as a force in 2019 when he earned first team All Big 12 honors with 9 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks and 12 starts. And fun fact for everybody, his father Jimmy is in the University of Texas Hall of Fame for his outstanding basketball career, and you can tell that in the way he plays. That the senior Blacklock, his dad, also toured with the Harlem Globetrotters. So little known fact there. This guy, what makes him so unique is his lateral agility and ability to work his way down the formation to the edges of the tackles boxes. His ability to shoot gaps and also laterally really makes him a fun player to watch. He's more quicker than strength, but he does understand leverage and how to manipulate offensive linemen to get past them. He has good bend for an interior defensive lineman, and you can really see some versatility where he could kick out to a 5-tech and maybe even a little farther because of that burst upfield. So he's not the longest guy, but he's just a real unique combination of burst, speed, and quickness that he needs to kind of maybe bulk up a little more to withstand the rigors of a down and out role, but he's going to be that movable piece because of his lateral agility.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he did lose a little bit of weight. I think he needs to bulk back up into that 300, 310, 315 range. And then he's shown that he still has that same burst. Adding a little bit more size to be able to have that bull rush again will be a huge factor. I mean, the guy's 6'3". I think he weighed in at 290 at the combine and ran a 4.9. So I mean, he is ultra athletic, and he's aggressive. He's got all the traits you want, just a little bit more size to that frame, and I think he is ready. He's an NFL caliber starter, probably someone who will start off as a rotational player. But he ate up gap schemes. Anytime that he, good luck trying to zone block against this guy, because he's just going to shoot the gap in a hurry. And destroy any play. I mean, whether that's a run, the pass, he's a beast.
Yeah, I have my same concerns. That's why I'm not too high on him. I've seen him get bullied by some guys, but I definitely think if he gets in the right situation where all you're asking him is to shoot gaps and he can fill that role for you, I think he can see early playing time at the next level as a rookie. But I also see maybe his first couple years, he's a second, third down player. But he definitely offers a lot of high upside as a player because of his athleticism.
Yeah, I want to see him a year or two more removed from his Achilles injuries, put that in the back seat, add some quality strength. I think he's a player that you take with in mind already having a starter there in-house and letting him learn, because he does have a variety of pass rushing moves. He can make some offensive linemen look foolish. It's just I'm not really confident to say that he's all the way back from his injury in a strength perspective and a complete body type and athletic perspective. So this was a good first year back, but I want to see him continually build and add that bulk and strength to, really make the whole variety of his pass rushing and run defense moves work. He is number 34 on Blitzalytics Big Board ranking right now. Those are going to be updated pretty soon here, right before the draft. So anybody that's watching these, make sure you take note of that. I can see him maybe being in that conversation in late round 1, more likely as a solid day 2, early second round pick. Teams that I could see interested in is the Steelers, as a player similar maybe to Javon Hargrave that they lost in free agency, that can maybe play some nose or maybe one technique, get some pass rushing force there. They already have some quality linemen to take on, day 1 type ability and let him develop behind him. The 49ers, after they got rid of DeForest Buckner, maybe get him in there in their rotation. The Chiefs, you play him alongside Chris Jones. The Saints and even the Texans maybe for some mock draft and some team fits right there, guys. Do you have any other fits maybe you want to throw out there?
You took the one I wanted to say is the Niners. It just makes sense because with them, yes, they lost one of their best guys in Buckner, but they still have first-round picks across the board. So, like, he can take advantage of not having to have much focus on him as a lineman, which his speed and his quick gap ability can shine as a rookie. I definitely like that fit.
Yeah, I think if they were to take that second first-round pick, trade back, like we could see, he would definitely be someone that they could snag the, end of the first, beginning of the second. I do have those concerns that we've talked about with size and everything like that. I think he might slip into the second round. There was a lot of talks that he can go anywhere from 20 to 40 really, and I would not be surprised if it's in early second round is kind of where I would be slotting him. So I would expect the Niners, because they don't have a second round pick, to drop back, and maybe that's where they target him. But it all depends. Again, it's like we've talked about a little bit ago. It's about the flavor. What flavor, who do you have already on that defensive line that only is gonna add to it, and give a different piece that he can play, across the line for the most part, especially on a third down. He's gonna have that pass rush ability. He's gonna be a game wrecker. He can do it in the run. He can do it in the pass. But like you said, on a downhill scheme, guys were able to take advantage of him and push him back a little bit. You just want to see him add that bulk.
Yeah, and for me, his floor and ceiling, his floor would be a rotational pass rusher. His ceiling would be a 3-down scheme versatile, really, because he can play across formation, interior defensive lineman. That's the reason why I put him a little higher than Madubuike, simply because he's a little bigger and he has that versatility to maybe play the whole way out to 5. I'm not sure Madubuike could do that. My player comp for him, I already kind of spoke to him as a player. The Steelers just lost. He went to the Eagles, and that's Javon Hargrave. Due to that lateral ability, Hargrave has a little bit more power than in his game. I could see that being his upside if he can add that bulk and strength to it, that he can have that kind of a similar skill set going forward, because he was able to shoot gaps, play laterally, but Hargrave also showed the ability to two-gap a little bit more than what Blaylock is at this point.
All right, moving on down the list. Number 2, Mr. Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina. This man is a beast and obviously one of our favorite prospects in the whole draft. Roy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Mr. Javon Kinlaw, shout out to you, my personal friend on Twitter. You're a man amongst boys here. We're getting to the cream of the crop here at interior defensive lineman. He showed great promise at a junior college, Jones County Community College, in 2016, garnering second-team junior college All-American honors for 4 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss. Then he moved his talents to South Carolina, getting his body in shape after arriving there, shedding 40 pounds so that he could go ahead and get in 13 games as a sophomore. He got 2 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups with those long, viney arms, and a block kick. He then started 12 games in 2018, sharing the team's defensive MVP award with 10 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and 5 pass breakups. He missed their bowl game that year because of a hip surgery that he had to have. Then as a senior, and the birth of his little baby girl, he really started putting the whole package together. He earned first-team AP All-American and first-team All-SEC honors. Even though his production may have not been through the roof with only 6 sacks, but he was simply dominant when you watch him on tape. He is built like he is on a Madden creative player. He has length for days, strength for days. He has vice grips for hands. He can toss offensive linemen at will. He has a wide variety of pass rushing moves. His lateral quickness is exactly what you're looking for. He has a versatility to play anywhere on the defensive line you want him to. He plays a high amount of snaps. He doesn't get tired, especially in his senior season after he improved his endurance. He can stack and shed. He can hold blocks in two gap and let his linebackers do the work. He's scheme versatile. He can play in a 3-4, 4-3. He can play inside, outside. And I'm convinced if you really put his mind to it, he can maybe even stand up if he wanted to, because there was simply no offensive linemen down in Mobile that were able to contain him while he was practicing.
It was almost embarrassing what he was doing to those guys in the Senior Bowl. There is a reason why he pulled up and decided to call it a week, because he had already won the Senior Bowl after just a day's worth of practice. This guy is, to me, it's, curse-like, freak on a leash type of athleticism and just a monster in the middle. And I cannot wait to see what this guy does. Like you were talking about the burst. I mean, he's kind of a one-trick pony still. He's very, very limited in his pass rushing arsenal moves. Just wait. He even talked about it. The sky's the limit for him. I mean, not to mention, the story and just the person overall. I think we're definitely hyping him up because of how much we are rooting for him as just a human being. He's I mean, what else is there to say about him? I mean, he's the nicest guy on the planet, and he's the meanest guy on the field. He can rip guys off of him. He can shed blocks. He can shed defenders. He can slip through the gaps. He can play the run. He can play the pass. There's nothing he can't do. And with those big old long arms of his, I mean, he's going to continuously bat down balls like we've seen, a J.J. Watt, become known for. I think he's very, very similar to J.J. Watt in the build. He's just even more athletic than he is.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have to say much on his play. You guys have touched all upon it. I'm right there with Roy. He's my number 2 interior lineman. But with that being said, I do think he does have a higher ceiling than the guy that we're about to talk about. He just has to hit it all, like you kind of talked about, Jack. He's just got to put it all together, maybe underneath the right defensive line coach. And you talked about it too. I really love his character. I really think he's going to have what it takes to be a professional at the next level. And then the only really my biggest concern, though, is obviously his injuries. That's something I couldn't ignore, which is why he comes in at number 2 for me on my personal list. But I mean, the dude's ceiling it's through the roof. He has the potential to be an all-pro at the next level.
Yeah, the injuries are something that have to be vetted and you have to be comfortable with. Also, his consistency maybe isn't there compared to our number 1 player on this list, and that's kind of why we have him at number 2 here. But my final grade, I do have him slightly higher than our number 1 prospect on this list, simply because I think he can push out a little bit farther on the defensive front and play more positions than what Brown may be able to. He also has just a small tendency to pop up right out of his stance off the ball, and he can be, let that center of gravity be available for the offensive lineman to kind of ragdoll then. So that's all coachable things that can be taken care of. But he's number 8 right now currently on the big board in Blitzalytics. He's a top round lock for me, and in my opinion, he should be a top 10 player at worst 15th, top 10, top 15. He should be off the board. Teams like the Panthers, the Cardinals, the Jags, the Bucks, the 49ers, the Colts, if they would be able to trade back up in a long-term investment. Just some really unique teams that could use some added players. I could even see the Eagles maybe go out and make a trade for him just because of the dynamic presence that's there, and how they always value defensive linemen.
Something tells me he's not making it past 14, especially if all 4 of those tackles are off the board. You can kind of slot him into Tampa Bay. I would not be surprised. You got any team fits, Cody?
I mean, yeah, I think he goes that far. I mean, it just depends. Like I've read mock drafts, I played out mock draft scenarios, and I've seen him fall. I've had him fall all the way to the Vikings. I think that's a potential. I think that's just like extreme floor as a player, just because I'm not sure how teams value interior linemen on their draft board.
I would actually like to see him even go to the Raiders, because that would make that defensive front scary with Max Crosby and him. That'd be really fun to see that defense as well. His projected rookie year, he's a day one starter for me easily. His floor is a low-end starter, maybe a rotational pass rusher. Really don't see the floor being there. I see the ceiling is where we should be looking at with this player. He's a pass rushing and run clogging force. Similar, and my player comp for him and the impact he can have on games is the Chiefs defensive lineman Chris Jones, able to wreak havoc on the inside, push the pocket, and be a force in the run game, and both as a person batting down passes, blocking kicks, getting to the quarterback. He's going to be a fun player to watch for the next decade.
I love that pro comp. I think it's identical. I mean, the arm length, I think, is technique can be there in a year or two. All right, coming in at number 1, we have the Derek Brown, 22-year-old defensive tackle out of Auburn. Take it away, Roy.
So this guy has one of the best personalities in the draft. He was a popular man on Auburn's campus. He gained enough respect from others in the SEC that he was named the conference Student Athlete Leadership Council in 2017. He was USA Army All-American Bowl Defensive Player of the Year, Georgia Sports Writers Associated Player of the Year in high school. So he came with a lot of banter into Auburn, and he didn't disappoint. He played in all 13 games as a true freshman. He only got 1.5 tackles for loss. Then he became a full-time starter in 2017. He had 9 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, forced 2 fumbles, and the SEC coaches voted him a second-team all-conference that year. Then in 2018, he started another 13 games, 10.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 2 pass breaking up, so he can get his hands up in the throwing lanes. And then as a senior, he absolutely wreaked havoc on the SEC. He won the Lot Impact Award that we used to write for. He won that, so you can tell the character that he has. He's very mature. He's academically sound. He was a finalist for the Chuck Bednarik Award and Outland Trophy after posting 55 tackles, tying for the team lead with 12.5 tackles for loss with Marlon Davidson. Collected 4 sacks, 4 pass breakups, and he ripped out 2 forced fumbles. He's just a really fun combination of size, bulk, strength, and athleticism that's uncanny for a big man that should be playing nose tackle. He competes with effort for days. His hands can just ragdoll people. He can two-gap just as well as he can shoot gaps. He has a quick punch to put offensive linemen back on their heels. His upper body power is unmatched in this class, in my opinion, and he has a lower body bulk to just simply not be moved. He has a variety of moves, including a club move that's very impressive, and offensive linemen really had a hard time consistently not keeping him out of the backfield. He always seemed to be able to shoot gaps or just simply run over people. And he's very nimble. You could see on quite a few many returns in his highlights, he's running down the field 40 or 50 yards on fumble recoveries. And the one, he almost scored a touchdown until the turf monster ate him. I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, so for me, like you said, those violent hands, the fact that nobody can really lock on, and if they do, he's just going to bull rush the shit out of them and put him into the backfield. It's just the truth. There's not a weakness to his game. I think Kinlaw just has the higher ceiling because he has a little bit more length. He has the freak strength and athleticism. But Derek Brown is about as well of a polished, pro-ready defensive tackle as it gets. He does remind me a lot of Gerald McCoy in terms of, play strength, versatility, being able to, the lateral movement, being able to just shed blockers with ease, and then just the hand technique. The hand technique is what gets me. He rarely ever lets guys get their hands on him, and when it does, it doesn't really last. He can shed blocks with ease.
Yeah, he's just a surefire prospect, in my opinion. He's got the highest floor out of the interior linemen. You know what you're going to get with him. Roy explained him as a player as perfect as you can get. One of the highlights I really enjoyed seeing him, I want to say it's from his junior year, is when he tossed the lineman out of the way and then the running back went to go block him and he jumped over the running back to get the sack. It just shows off his athleticism. He can, like you talked about, he can pick up a fumble and try to take it to the house. He's just like I don't know, you just know what you're going to get with him. I don't know if he's got a super high ceiling because he's already coming in right there with a high floor. But he's a guy that can play 10 plus years in this league.
His personality and the impact he could have just reminds me of a Warren Sapp. His personality, like how fun-loving he is, but he can be serious at the same time. Not saying player type, but just his personality as a Warren Sapp. I could see him having a lot of fun and being a face of this league in a number of years. Right now, he's currently number 5 on our big board. I think that's a solid ranking. The only reason Kinlaw is behind him, and that's maybe one of the knocks on Brown, is that he might not be able to push out as far on the formation, that he might be stuck to a more of a 3-tech, maybe to the interior. But that's not to say he can't maybe be put out at 5 technique in certain situations. Right now, he's a top 10 lock for me. In the first round, teams like the Dolphins, the Panthers, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Jaguars. And if he would happen to fall to your Buccaneers, Jack, that would be him and Vita Vea would be a scary combination in that front.
Don't tease me. It ain't going to happen.
No, I don't think it's going to happen. Year 1, though, his projected rookie year, he's a day 1 starting nose tackle at least. He could be more of an impactful pass rusher. He won't be just pigeonholed as a nose tackle. His floor for me is a 2-down run stuffing nose tackle at worst. If for some reason he's not able to dominate like he did the SEC, his ceiling is a dynamic run clogger on the first 2 downs, and then somebody that can push the pocket and wreak havoc in passing downs from an interior spot. My player comp for him, and there's 2 players actually for him that have been floating my mind. One's a player that's still currently playing right now. That's Cam Hayward. He's a kind of a similar player, only he might have more versatility to push outside. But he's been a force the last few years as a pass rusher and as a run defender. Nobody's been able to control him along the offensive line. He's always clean. He's always able to shed blocks with ease. Cam Hayward's a similar player, but I think his ceiling could be a Haloti Ngata type player to where he could really wreak havoc and be a difference maker as a pass rusher as well.
I like both of those. I see a little more Cameron Hayward than Haloti Ngata, but I get what you're saying from the pass rushing standpoint.
Yeah, he should definitely go top 10. I think his ceiling to get drafted is I could definitely see the Lions taking him. He seems like a Matt Patricia type guy if they don't go with Okudah. And then I think his floor is either that I think it's the Cardinals pick. There's been rumors floating around that if they don't draft one of these offensive tackles, that they would love to get Derrick Brown on their team.
Oh, if he falls that far, it's going to be really hard for some of these teams not pull the trigger. And if he falls probably past 5 or 6, I wouldn't be surprised to see a team actually move up to go get someone like that. He's just that much of a game wrecker. He's somebody that's going to be a 10-plus year starter in the NFL. I don't doubt that one bit.
Yeah, he's just a really fun player. And like I said, the off-the-field impact, he's going to be a class guy for your organization, not only as a player, but off the field in every endeavor and in your PR department.
All right, that concludes our top 5, but we also have our superlatives. Roy, take it away.
All right, so my superlatives here I want to just touch upon is the pass rushing interior defensive lineman that didn't make the top 5 is Jordan Elliott from Missouri. He's thick and nimble, can also shoot some gaps. He's a pretty big guy. I don't think he's scratched the surface of his potential yet, so he's a unique type player for a pass rush. Run defender, another player I'm quite fond of is Leki Fotu from Utah. This guy, put on the tape of him at Utah, he straight up throws kids around like they're on the playground. He's also a huge personality that you'll want in your defensive locker room. He'll motivate guys. He has just a great personality, great play set, but he might only be limited to a 2-down run stuffer. I'm not convinced that his pass rushing ability is going to convert. So first step quickness. I went with Neville Gallimore because he's an intriguing player. He does have first step quickness, strength, can shoot gaps, but he doesn't always play to his measurables. He's somebody that I have a little bit of a boom or bust feeling on. Some people are really high on him. His highlights are high, but he can also be washed out of plays easily. So that's my first step quickness player. Pass rush moves. This is kind of a similar player to Davidson. As James Lynch. He played up and down the formation, mostly at defensive end at Baylor. But this guy is advanced as with his toolbox of moves. He has heavy hands. He's quickness. His functional strength, I won't say he has the bulk. I don't know if he can convincingly play a 5 technique right now unless he bulks up a little bit more. Versatility right now, how could you not mention Raekwon Davis? He'll remind you of John Henderson with his size. He can play in a 3-4 and a 4-3. So those were just my superlatives. A couple other names just to throw out there. Laurel Murchison put up a great week down at the Senior Bowl. He's kind of miscast in a 3-3-5 system at NC State. He has first step quickness and a combination of strength that'll be intriguing in that 4th to 5th round range. McTelvin Agim from Arkansas, first step quickness and also the strength to anchor inside from a 1 technique. And Devon Hamilton, who really is only a 1-year starter from Ohio State. He's a nose tackle, played there, but he don't sleep on his quickness and be able to slip blocks upfield.
Well, I mean, Cody, I think he kind of just dominates. I mean, what's there to be said other that the scouting encyclopedia hasn't said? I do like Lekifo too. Again, he's probably two down specific, but he's going to be. He's a bowling ball in the middle. Like you just cannot move that guy. He doesn't step backwards ever. He's a wreck. He is a game wrecker. When grading Bradley Anae, he showed up a ton in film and helped Bradley Anae's padded Bradley Anae's stats quite a bit by forcing the pocket up. So I mean he can push the pocket, but he's not the fastest off of the line. He's kind of just one of those guys that you're just not going to be able to move him. So he's going to have a bigger impact for the guys on the edge and a bigger impact for his linebackers than his stats will show.
Yeah, one of the guys I like who's currently, I do have to go back and make sure I update my interior lineman, but I do like Neville Gallimore. I agree. I guess I'm betting more on his boom. He does need to be more consistent with his play, and I'm a big Raekwon Davis fan too. I do like what he can offer. I just think he really hurt himself by backing out of the Senior Bowl. I think he could have really upped his stock with a good week in Mobile.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a big mistake. I think he was leaning too heavily on the name of Alabama and him being a starter for so long there and playing. He had solid years, but he was always kind of overshadowed by the bigger, better guys that were on that line that were top of the top 10 first round picks. And you can go through the list at Bama's defensive linemen over the last couple of years, but he's been a staple on that defensive line, but he hasn't been a star by any means.
Yeah, he's a fun player, and if he can hit his ceiling, he might be the 3rd best defensive lineman in this class.
Yeah, and it just shows, like we talked about after Kinlaw and Brown, like it's just a mixed opinions. Your bottom, your 3, 4, and 5, and everybody that you named on your superlatives are in my top 10 interior linemen right now. It's just that I have them in a different way, but that's just what we talked about at the beginning of this episode is. It's like, what flavor do you want? Do you want a Fotu who can just dominate in the run game and take up space and be a mean guy in your defense? So it will be interesting to see how these interior guys fall off the board when we get to day 2.
All right, gentlemen, I appreciate it. We've got a handful more of these to be producing, so I appreciate you guys tuning in. Looks like our technical difficulties have been solved from last episode to this one, so we really appreciate you guys' patience with us. You can check out all of these players we've talked about. We've got scouting reports on Blitzalytics.com. You can hit Blitzalytics.com, hit that scouting button, and check out all of our patented weighted scouting reports. We feel like we have some of, if not the most accurate scouting reports online. And we have a star-studded cast of scouts that work for us here at Blitzalytics. Check those out. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe button, and then also stay tuned for these as they will be available on podcast platforms everywhere here in the near future, probably within the next few days. We'll make sure we get all of these top 5s on podcast through the Blitz Breakdown. So again, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Cody Manning, where can they find you on Twitter?
I am at Cody Talks NFL. Feel free to give me a follow, and if you send me a message, I'll gladly talk some football with you.
Roy.
Mine's at Preacher Boy Roy, and I haven't thrown us out lately. Stay humble. Be a blessing, everybody.
There it is. It's been a minute. All right, you can find me at Jack Bourgeois, JackBooshwa. Again, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Stay safe out there with everything that we got going on in the world. And like Roy said, stay humble, be a blessing. Blitz out.